Yes, I think this is a very pivotal chapter. In some ways, it's maybe not as famous as 3 and 6. You know, the fiery furnace and the lion's story of Daniel and the lion's den. Those might be the most famous ones. But I think this is very pivotal, both in, yes, it starts off his prophetic career and as a vision of the future and world history. And I think even in Daniel's life, it basically is the chapter that really starts, let's say, his public career. Like we've seen how he was taken to Babylon, how he's already showing signs of integrity and being faithful to God. Now we're really going to see that pay off, and how will that actually catapult him into Babylonian politics?
Yeah, and it's not until another empire takes over that anyone makes any attempt on discrediting or bringing down Daniel.
At least not under King Nebuchadnezzar. I don't think he'd have quite tolerated that.
Yeah, Nebuchadnezzar is a very strong-willed, fiery
Right. Yes.
person, and he's not a good guy. He's a pretty bad character, but he is strong-willed, and he becomes, Daniel's great patron and protector until
Yes.
he himself actually has a conversion moment. Nebuchadnezzar is kind of a secondary main character in the book of Daniel, and
Yes.
his story arc is fascinating.
Well, it's also in some ways the story of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Like Nebuchadnezzar is the most famous Babylonian emperor. I think most of the others, like no one has hardly ever heard of them.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
So yes, it's also, I guess, the story of Nebuchadnezzar and the story of Babylon in general.
And in this dream we're going to read about here, it's actually Nebuchadnezzar's dream. So God is showing something specifically to this King Nebuchadnezzar. And in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams, wherewith his spirit was troubled, and his sleep brake from him. Then the king commanded to call the magicians, and the astrologers, and the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans, for to show the king his dreams. So they came, and stood before the king.
Chaldeans is just another word for magicians and sorcerers, right?
I think in that time, the word Chaldean was probably synonymous with this type of wise man.
Yes, it's interesting that Babylon and Medo-Persia later on seem to have had this very prominently, this whole class of wise men, wizards, witches, enchanters. Like it's very, very unusual, I think, compared to other ancient nations.
It must have gone way back. So if we're talking about a strictly biblical view of history, this would probably go all the way back to Nimrod's empire, shortly after the flood, where they start building cities in Mesopotamia. And I
Oh,
imagine
yes,
all this kind of evil wisdom, if you could call it that, probably
right.
starts at that time and continues on for thousands of years, all the way up until what we're reading about now, around 600 BC.
Right. Of course, we don't know if all of it was real. I'm so sure some of them, yes, were genuinely evil, but you could also make the point that it's like today we have magicians, quote unquote, who do magic tricks and stuff. It's very possible that a lot of this is also just astrology and just fortune telling, but not anything actually.
Yeah, that's a very
More
good point.
skills
That's a
than
very good
actually
point. So
anything
you
else.
have when you have this culture of renowned wise men, there's sure to be corruption. And I think we're going to see that here, that these guys really aren't all that they are thought to be.
No, no.
And the king said unto them, I have dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream. Then spake the Chaldeans to the king in Syriac, O king, live forever. Tell thy servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation.
Syriac is Aramaic, right? I think.
Yeah, so I don't want to get into it a whole lot here, but there's some fascinating history around the peoples of this time. In a lot of ways, that they're kind of in a post-apocalyptic world where these aren't the original Amorite, Sumerian, and Assyrian peoples. These
Right.
are actually Semitic peoples, Chaldeans and Aramaeans, that have taken over Mesopotamia and kind of inherited the culture and the civilization. So, these are, as it says, these are Chaldean peoples. These aren't the original, Sumerians and Amorites. And they're speaking Syriac, they're speaking Aramaic, which is a Semitic language, very similar to Hebrew. So we get a little bit of insight into the world that these people live in here. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, The thing is gone from me. If ye will not make known unto me the dream with the interpretation thereof, ye shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill. But if ye show the dream and the interpretation thereof, ye shall receive of me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore, show me the dream and the interpretation thereof. He is not messing around. I think, he's a very forceful, charismatic military man, and he seems to already be seriously disillusioned with his wise men at this point. Just from the way he talks to them, he's not very respectful or patient with them.
No, he's not, and he has very severe punishments. Being cut in pieces is, I think, also a form of torture, right? The Babylonians and Mesopotamians were very skilled in this. And he's also taking the dream seriously. I think that's another interesting point. Because nowadays we don't really take dreams that seriously. I mean, it's like people have dreams all the time and we don't actively seek their meanings or stuff. But in the ancient world, people, especially kings, tended to give a lot more weight and importance to dreams, right?
That's a really good point. Yes, dreams really meant something in these ancient times, and I get the impression that this was a particularly troubling and powerful dream. The way it affected him, he probably woke up quite scared and just bewildered. It might have been a recurring dream also, when the way it says in the first verse, how he dreamed dreams. Like this might have been something
for sure.
Like something like he would go to sleep and he would see this image, and then next night he would go to sleep and he would see this image, and he is very troubled by this.
Right, like maybe he'd been having it a week until he finally gave up and was like, okay, dang it, I'm just going to call my wise men and see what is up with this. It could have been also the Lord was kind of impressing on him that this is actually important. Like God was sending it. Daniel says God sent him the dream, and probably God is also impressing on him that,
Yeah.
This is not your run-of-the-mill dream. Pay attention to this.
They answered again and said, Let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation of it. So, like we talked about, these guys are very steeped in how to please the king. They know if he had told them the dream, they would have come up with an interpretation of it, and it would have sounded very convincing, I'm sure. But the king's not really playing the game the way they know it. He is kind of he's kind of flanking them in a way they aren't prepared for.
Right. I guess the question here is, so did he really forget his dream and is trying to remember it? Or is he testing the wise men to see if they're really genuine? Because he also says the thing is gone from me. Like, is he just telling them that to test how truthful and are their abilities really genuine? Or is he genuinely, forgetful?
The king answered and said, I know of certainty that ye would gain the time, because ye see the thing is gone from me. But if ye will not make known unto me the dream, there is but one decree for you. For ye have prepared lying and corrupt words to speak before me till the time be changed. Therefore, tell me the dream, and I shall know that ye can show me the interpretation thereof. Yeah, that's kind of to what you said. He's saying, if you can tell me the dream, then I will know that your interpretation is right. The Chaldeans answered before the king and said, There is not a man upon the earth that can show the king's matter. Therefore there is no king, lord, nor ruler that asks such things at any magician, or astrologer, or Chaldean. And it is a rare thing that a king requireth, and there is none other that can show it before the king, except the gods whose dwelling is not with flesh. Ooh, that's a little bit passive-aggressive. They're talking to the king. They're kind of trying to put the king in his place, saying, no, this isn't how it works. You do not get to talk to us that way. No king has ever asked this of the wise men.
And they bring the gods into it.
Yeah, and they bring the gods.
No one but the gods can do this for you. In other words,
They're trying to tell the king that he's out of line in asking them that.
He's out of line. And I think they also genuinely can't do it. This is genuinely something that they are not prepared for and cannot actually accomplish. How are they going to know what he dreamed? Because they could make something up, but then he'd probably be like, oh, well, you're lying. And again, there's no good way for them out of this.
Yeah.
He's backed them up against the wall. And now they're kind of forced to confess, we can't do it.
For this cause the king was angry and very furious, and commanded to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. Along with, of course, what we would consider superstition and magic, there was also a lot of real knowledge that these wise men had, because they had the astronomy and the mathematics, and they kind of mixed that all in with their astrology and their magic.
Oh yes, of course. All these things in the ancient world were mixed in. You had magic with the gods, with shamanism, with everything was just thrown in usually.
So if the king had gone ahead and done this, that would have been quite a loss to science and technology.
Oh, yes. And I think even for their culture, for their spirit, let's say what they believed was their spiritual life and pleasing the gods, and it would have been a big thing because the wise men are so prominent, and it's like all of a sudden they're just going to be wiped out.
Right. And we have actually seen that happen in different civilizations, unfortunately, where, especially in the case of conquerors, when conquerors take over some nation and, they try to wipe out the religion, and so they kill all the priests and destroy all the temples, destroy all the libraries, and there's this great loss in our knowledge of the ancient world and of science.
Right, it's like he's basically just wiping out all the intellectuals, so to speak, doctors, lawyers, right, scientists.
Yeah.
All these mathematicians, everything along this line. And he himself was Babylonian. He'd probably grown up even as a lot of these people. He'd lived his whole life steeped with these guys, and now all of a sudden he's like, no, I can't live with them anymore. Just get rid of all of them.
And the decree went forth that the wise men should be slain, and they sought Daniel and his fellows to be slain. Then Daniel answered with counsel and wisdom to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, which was gone forth to slay the wise men of Babylon. He answered and said to Arioch, the king's captain, why is the decree so hasty from the king? Then Arioch made the thing known to Daniel.
So Daniel, obviously, though he's one of the wise men, he was not there in the court when this decision was made and the order given to kill all of them.
So at this point, he's not the prominent wise man that he becomes. Right. He is, even though it seems the king already liked Daniel and his three companions, they don't really have any status among the wise men. So when this very important matter comes up, they don't know about it.
I guess they were probably still like apprentices, probably in the wise men in their schools. Do you think this was after the 3 years of training or during?
That's a good question. I would think that it's after, but yeah.
It says in the second. It's interesting. It says in the second year.
Okay.
Which suggests, anyway.
The second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar.
Right.
No, that's a good question. We'd have to look at the timelines, like when did Nebuchadnezzar become king? Because we know he was campaigning against Judea while his father was still king, I think.
Oh, that is true.
So I don't know how it all lines up.
Right. In any case, I think it's either toward the end of this, somewhere in the middle, or toward the end. For sure. Either it's toward the end or right after they'd had those 3 years. In any case, he's still not prominent yet, like you said.
Then Daniel went in and desired of the king that he would give him time, and that he would show the king the interpretation. So Daniel apparently is able to go before the king. That does shed a little light on Daniel's situation right now.
And he gave him time. Like the king was furious, but he still is rational enough to be, okay, you can still have some time off to think about this.
In a situation like this, it could be that when the king gives the order to kill all the wise men, he might not have even been thinking of how far that order would go. And so he gives the order, and then Arioch is going off to kill, the 4 Hebrew wise men, and Daniel comes in, and the king's like, oh, that's you too? Okay, well, yeah, you can have some time. Then Daniel went to his house and made the thing known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they would desire mercies of the God of heaven concerning this secret, that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel answered and said, Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changeth the times and seasons. He removeth kings and setteth up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the wise, and knowledge to them that know understanding. He revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth with him. I thank thee and praise thee, O thou God of my fathers, who hath given me wisdom and might, and hast made known unto me now what we desired of thee. For thou hast now made known unto us the king's matter.
That was a good prayer. Well, his life was on the line. I'm sure they all prayed very desperately.
Yeah, and they are very thankful when
Yes.
God comes through. Like we talked about with the last chapter, they are in such a precarious, unimaginable situation, just cut off from their family, from their culture, from anything that they know in this foreign world. They don't know what's going to happen to them, and now like this kind of ray of hope is coming through that God is actually doing something with them in this situation.
Right.
And it would be a huge relief to them.
Oh yes, they're very vulnerable, but God is coming through for them.
Therefore Daniel went in unto Arioch, whom the king had ordained to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus unto him, Destroy not the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will show unto the king the interpretation. Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste, and said thus unto him, I have found a man of the captives of Judah, that will make known unto the king the interpretation. The king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, Art thou able to make known unto me the dream which I have seen, and the interpretation thereof? Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, The secret which the king hath demanded cannot the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the soothsayers show unto the king. But there is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets, and maketh known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. Thy dream and the visions of thy head upon thy bed are these.
He makes sure to give God the credit.
Yeah, so I guess the way that Daniel communicates to the Babylonians about his God is he talks about him as the God of heaven.
Yes, and the revealer of secrets. And then
Yeah.
you've got Arioch, who makes sure to give all the credit to himself. I have found the man.
Yes, that's right.
He's hoping probably for promotion alongside, like just, O king, I have helped you.
As for thee, O king, thy thoughts came into thy mind upon thy bed, what should come to pass hereafter, and he that revealeth secrets maketh known to thee what shall come to pass. But as for me, this secret is not revealed to me for any wisdom that I have more than any living, but for their sakes that shall make known the interpretation to the king, and that thou mightest know the thoughts of thy heart. Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet of iron and part of clay. Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and brake them to pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth. Alright, thanks for watching so far. At this point we pause our discussion so we can get ready for the next part of this chapter, where Daniel gives the interpretation of the dream to King Nebuchadnezzar. Please be sure to join us for the next part of Daniel chapter 2, and thanks again for watching. Bye for now.